Breaking news. Dangerous neighbor Estonia. Today, Saturday, April 11th, 26th year, a rally is taking place in the border town of Narva, Estonia, where, according to eyewitnesses, mostly local marginalized groups are participating, advocating for self-determination and secession from the country. Amidst the chaotic rally, groups of people in camouflage without identification entered the city. Armed men have seized the city hall, police stations, and several key administrative buildings. Checkpoints have been set up at the city entrances, traffic is restricted, and communication is disrupted in some areas. Essentially, a forceful takeover of power has occurred in Narva within a matter of hours. The scenario painfully resembles what was seen in Sloviansk, Ukraine in 2014. First, a spontaneous protest, then the emergence of well-organized armed groups, followed by the swift establishment of full control over the city. Estonian authorities officially advise staying home, avoiding the administrative center, and not approaching checkpoints. And we begin. You are now watching a new episode of Apostles' Thoughts. And it's called How I Would Seize Narva and Create the Narva People's Republic. So first of all, welcome to everyone. What would I like to say? It's good that the news you've just heard from me is something I wrote and came up with myself and read to you. But now imagine that you actually woke up today, Saturday, picked up your phone as usual, and started scrolling, and all the channels are buzzing with the same thing, namely a coup in Narva, a secession in Narva, strange rallies happening. Essentially, we just need to realize that when we read the news in the morning, it might say that some marginalized groups are walking around the city in balaclavas, seizing administrative buildings and police stations. They seize post offices, telegraphs, administrative buildings, as everyone knows how to make a revolution. There are also people in uniforms without identification. We've basically already experienced this in Ukraine. So here's the thing. This is a crowd of armed people seizing the city, depriving people of their usual lives, and basically engaging in lawlessness. This is what's known as virtual secession or hybrid warfare. Now imagine that all of this is actually happening. The saddest thing is that it can be done, and preparing for it isn't that difficult. And all of this only takes a few months to prepare. We'll try to delve into and discuss this topic, but there's not much need to delve into it here. Why? Because about 2 weeks ago I released a video where I talked about a potential threat to a NATO country, specifically Estonia. Well, basically to the Baltic countries. Now, all the journalistic buzz there is spreading rumors that Russia will open a full-fledged second front. In my video, I explain with examples why they don't have the resources for a full-fledged second front, why it won't be a ground or air special military operation for protection. But I think there might be another scenario, a hybrid one, a hybrid scenario, and it's real. Russia genuinely doesn't have the resources to deploy tanks somewhere else right now. They might do it out of stupidity, but I don't think they will. What needs to be done? A provocation needs to be done, in the form of little green men, without identification, with local marginalized, aggrieved, and disappointed people presenting opportunities. Why is this necessary? Firstly, Russia still doesn't have a clear answer on whether the so-called fifth article of NATO works. Meanwhile, Russia clearly understands that NATO is currently in crisis. We're overlaying the situation in the Middle East with not very good, rather terrible relations with the US president. We get this explosive mix where NATO is on its own and the US is on its own. The US is fighting with Israel down below in the east. Straight liberate. NATO refused. European partners went to hell. So what's the essence? We need to try to shake up the EU and NATO under the guise of self-determination of the people and see if NATO will defend or not. Will it fight for Narva or not? If not, then everyone will recognize that the NATO bloc is just a facade. It doesn't function. all countries will automatically start defending themselves. And apart from the collapse of NATO, the concept of the EU might also fall apart because everyone will be on their own. Well, I'm not talking about Schengen, that's another story, but some people still don't understand the difference between the EU and the Schengen zone. So, NATO will have a real choice, to defend or not to defend. You may ask why this is impossible, but why was it possible for us in 2014? No one believed in it, no one talked about it, the preconditions were there, but it happened to us. It happened. I think it's a very interesting topic. Probably won't be a short video. This video is by no means a plan for Russian special services, it's a video for people from the EU. It will probably be translated from my English language channel. An English channel will appear here somewhere, run by Yulia. So this video is for Europe, NATO, special services and officers. I know they are watching me. From the EU, I send you greetings. Everyone, like and subscribe. So, we will figure it out and think about what to do with it. But we need to highlight the weak points and strong points. We, as great strategists, know. But basically, we need to first identify the object we're going to capture. What stands before us? The task. There is a city with a population not big nor small, 50,000 people. It's important to understand that out of 50,000 people, according to official statistics, 80% are Russian-speaking and connected to Russia. I was corrected in the comments. I read the comments you write under the Apostles' Thoughts. Almost all say the number is smaller. Alright, let's take the number that 50% of this city's population are Russians. So, another statistic says approximately 30% of these people have Russian passports. This combination of factors, basically, the city is located on the border and we'll look at maps and arrows there directly. So the combination of these factors makes the city of Narva an ideal target for the start of my armed separatist movement, so to speak. You really need to spend little time in Google. You'll now watch two videos in which a pseudo-Tsar claims that the city of Narva is originally Russian. Even Peter I returned it back. He tried to get it back, but it wasn't returned. И поэтому it needs to be returned.
То же самое и в западном направлении. Это касается Нарвы, там его первых походах. Чего он появился туда? Возвращал и укреплял. Вот что делал.
And the second one, the clip, is where Russian propaganda accuses the Baltic countries of aiding us, particularly by opening their airspace for our nice birds to fly over to view the sea, where there are refineries, transfer stations, all sorts of things. We like it, explosions are there, you can check it out on telegrams. So urgent news.
The authorities of Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia have officially opened their airspace to Ukrainian drones for attacks on St. Petersburg, the Leningrad region, and the entire northwest of Russia. The map of Ukrainian UAV flights looks as follows. Previously, flights were allowed discreetly and individually, fearing a backlash, but now they seem to have stopped being afraid. The question is, why? If a state provides its airspace for enemy drones, enemies to us, does this state, according to military science, enter into a war with us? Basically, yes. This is effectively crossing a red line. Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia? Yes. They were set up by NATO to see our reaction to how we would respond to these three dwarfs who started, essentially, practically combat actions against us.
We've decided on the goal and the reasoning as well. Let's move on. We are saying that a full-scale invasion is impossible. Well, we're ruling out that option because it's more or less clear there. But we're discussing a scenario where a group of military personnel without insignia crosses the border, although there's actually no need to cross it, and very quickly captures all important administrative buildings and places where there's any weaponry, well, buildings where people can resist. In particular, I just want to immediately recall, for those who didn't know or perhaps forgot, how the story with Donbass began. In 2014, in April 2014. Strelkov's group, consisting of just 50 people, in fact that's 2 platoons, less than 2 platoons, secretly crosses the Ukrainian border, which was poorly guarded and poorly controlled. Naturally, with the help of the FSB, since they are the border guards, and in reality he very quickly, almost effortlessly, takes over the entire city of Sloviansk, but simply takes it under control, seizes it, let's call it that. They captured the local station, the police station. There's a video from it, maybe Vadim will find it and insert it. They set up checkpoints at the entrance. This event was the beginning of everything that's happening, even now. All of this is happening soon. By the way, it's April now, April 2014, and now it's April 2026. 12 years. 50 people started a bloody massacre, a bloody history that has lasted 12 years, where millions have already suffered and thousands of homes have been destroyed. What do you think of this topic, subscribers? Well, go ahead, give a like to Vadim's new post. For those who don't remember, before Strelkov crossed the border, or rather illegally crossed it in March, the FSB and the main directorate of the General Staff of the Russian Armed Forces, through their agents, held various rallies. Rallies were organized in March. The main theme of the rallies was activists opposing Euromaidan. Well, it's all nonsense. In our case, we are now in 2026, and after 4 years of full-scale bloody battles, Russia won't even need to conduct preparations. They just need to take any amount of photo and video footage from any rally, where, for example, marginalized people from our city hold some sort of picket with placards. We are being oppressed, our rights are being destroyed, we are not respected, we're not given some sort of pension. They walked around with placards the day before, and the next day it all started. All these rallies will become the formal pretext to start the liberation of the Narva People's Republic from the damned Estonian junta. So everything will be much simpler. A formal pretext which Nebezia will then wave around somewhere in those super powerful international organizations, at the UN, all that. You know how I love all these topics. And that's it. Let's go. I'll tell you now how I would implement this plan. Of course, this is my imagination, but that's how I would do it. I have my program called Money from the Apostle. It's related to the fact that I work a lot with people in different territories, different countries, different regions. And yes, I know what intelligence work is and how to handle it, because it's not a military secret. In this video you're watching now, images appear so you can go find them and take a look. We analyze what agents are and how they operate. I would place the bulk of the activity in Narva on the intelligence. I would recruit 50 to 100 active agents, regardless of their motives. For money, for certain prospects, for problem solving. I would recruit 50 to 100 agents and lay out plans for them, specifying who would do what. Of course, these should be people with cars, including women, students, girls. It should be a mix. So, their task would be to check in before the main fighters arrive, gather necessary belongings, equipment, prepare EcoFlow, Starlinks, everything needed should already be on site, and it should be in the vehicles, shovels, tape, balaclavas, handcuffs, communication channels, SIM cards, phones. I would do all of this within a month with my intelligence apparatus in Estonia. It's not difficult to do, especially since I wouldn't be doing it alone, but with some assistance and advisors, we would accomplish this. Moreover, these people wouldn't have a clear plan all the time, meaning they wouldn't know where or when the finish line is. They would receive information according to the mission, the roadmap. Put this and that in the trunk, send a photo, and you're ready. At 5 a.m. you need to be at such and such intersection. Someone will come to you there, you'll open the trunk and they'll take it. Then you'll get in the car and drive back to the capital or somewhere else. Or you'll hand over the car because you've already received 3,000 euros for it. This way, you can complete the bulk of the operation before it starts. Prepare video cameras and radios, set up groups in Telegram, WhatsApp. This all needs to be done when the main group arrives. We are using the same Strelkov model. 50 people crossing the border secretly with weapons. They'll carry weapons, of course. Agents will also prepare some weapons. Whether it's smoothbore, carbines, there's plenty of weaponry in Estonia. It's no military secret. So when the fighters, military professionals, arrive, everything will be ready. They'll simply arrive and carry out their missions, complete their tasks. Now we're going to be like Bulba-Führer. Here's Bulba-Führer. He always talked about some maps. So now we're going to talk about these maps. Look, in fact, there are several options. The first option is the Friendship of People's Bridge. Currently, it serves as a pedestrian border crossing, essentially a checkpoint. Sort of heavily but virtually fortified by the Estonian side. Movement of equipment and vehicles across it is currently impossible. But essentially, that's not necessary. We're going to talk about this now. There will be two small inserts to help you understand the visual context of what I'm explaining here. The shallow part of the Narva River at Krenholm Manufacturing is the second vulnerable point. In fact, we're talking about Estonia. Why? Because the river is shallow. The water level is regulated by what? By whom? Is everyone ready? Is that clear? The Narva hydroelectric station. Seems okay for now. But the Narva hydroelectric station is controlled and owned by whom? That's right, the Russian side. So at some point someone could turn the valve and reduce the water and you wouldn't even need to swim. You could just walk across like a person, just like that. As you can see from these videos, in the armed pedestrian group, and we're talking about likely special forces such as Sines, these will be officers, armed, trained personnel, although Sines isn't quite the same now, but still. Like what, it won't be any trouble for them to cross the pre-drained water to a small land area and end up in Estonia. But that won't be a problem. We also need to consider that it's likely there will be a full-scale crossing of Russian armed forces across the river. For those who don't know, these antics have happened before. The crossing occurred both at the Narva Reservoir and the Narva River itself in 2025. You give a like and I show you the evidence and the analysis continues. Photos and videos appear in your feed. This evening, the Estonian Ministry of Foreign Affairs reported that Russian border service boats on the Narva River were spotted with Wagner Group flags attached. And that's great. Whatever the Russians plan on Narva, it's happening under our close watch. That's one, and here's two. News from December 19th, 2025. So basically about 4 months ago. This concerns the 3 Russian military personnel who crossed the Estonian-Russian control line at Narva this Wednesday, were on Estonian territory and then safely left. Wonderful. It's not about someone lost, as Estonian border guards recorded the movement of Russian military on a hovercraft on the Narva River using surveillance cameras. Blah blah blah. You get it, right? It's pretty much a revolving door there. They go back and forth. They probably just went to the duty-free and left. They didn't show passports. We move on. Look, to keep my thoughts brief, I've sketched out a scenario for you. I'll comment while reading what I doodled on the maps. Let's imagine the beginning of an actual capture of the city. The group of agents we've talked about already at the right time and place in the city of Narva with everything they need in their personal vehicles moves to at least 3 locations. I'm talking about the easiest scenario here. Specifically, the first group moves to the Friendship Bridge, which we've discussed. The second group of vehicles approaches the Krengold factory. And the third is already waiting at the shores of the Narva Reservoir. A small number of Estonian Coast Guard border guards, along with those at the Narva border post, are simultaneously neutralized by an FPV drone attack. We understood that there's Rubicon specialists in flight operations. They'll just fly in and kill everyone. Anyone in uniform will be killed. At a certain moment, 200 FPV drones will rise into the sky and everything in direct sight, except for the necessary vehicles, will be destroyed. So you could easily pass through, even those fortified areas. And that's the truth. Так вот, The FPV drones will go in the first wave. If previously the border guards needed to be neutralized with firearms, which required getting close and starting a firefight, now that's unnecessary. Let me say again, modern warfare has changed. In fact, the city, river and bridge, everywhere you can fly, they will fly into every window. There will be no snipers, but that's true. But let's just call things what they are. Special forces will run on the ground, fully covered by FPVs, while a swarm of Mavic scouts hovers. And don't talk to me about electronic warfare, because the agents will already pinpoint all the EW, and drones with night vision will fly there, right? Right, let's move on. At the same time, we must understand that, besides the agents assisting the forces, there will also be full-fledged representatives, armed representatives of Estonian citizens on the side of the Russian criminal formations. These will also be people in special camouflage, and they will fight in the same way. You should have no doubt that those who will attack with Russia will have Estonian documents, they will have passports, and they will 100% not have Russian documents. So that in case of failure, it would be difficult to definitively say that it's Russia. Remember what Putin said? These are minors. They found it all in their minds. Bought it in recruitment offices. Bought it in military stores. So this will all happen in a coordinated operation. In the rear of the city of Narva, armed individuals will be operating, targeting security forces, police, border guards, potential intelligence services, possible vigilantes. From the side of the Russian Federation, from Vanko City, I call it Vanko City, FPVs will be flying and special forces will be entering. That's how it will begin, at least. Why involve Estonian citizens? Because it's simple. We also had many fools who, for a bottle or promised positions, would stand and march under these flags. Let's continue. Agents are operating in the rear. Special forces with firearms are coming from the Russian Federation. They don't need to carry much because they already have everything there. They have food, they have medical supplies, they will be going with ammunition and firearms. They will travel on boats without identification marks. If something goes wrong, FPVs will fly. If they can't enter quietly, the FPVs will provide cover. And believe me, there will be a lot of these FPVs. They will enter without identification marks. 50 people, that's just 10 boats with 4 to 5 people each. In different directions, it's necessary to cause chaos. Diversionary maneuvers can also be made. Agents, for example, might get into 10 accidents that night, maybe 30, and the police will go there to figure out what's happening. In other words, this can all be planned out, drawn on a board, and combined. What happens next? A group of armed individuals in vehicles moves to 3 main locations. The first is the Narva Police Department. The second is Narva College of the Academy of the Ministry of Internal Affairs. The third is the Kaitselit office, the local defense force. The takeover of these buildings is not just with firearms, but with the support of FPVs. Why? Because we always know that storming buildings is a dangerous risk. But if there is a building and 20 FPVs fly into 20 windows, no one will shoot from those windows anymore. There will be casualties, wounded, there will be panic, there will be chaos. In other words, it will all be done synchronously in parallel. Moreover, the distances are small. By the time the group lands and reaches the area leisurely, other units can enter. FPV operators, medics, again, disguised as anything and anyhow. You might ask me why all this. There is no military base or anything like that in Narva, and that's not needed. That's something that can be dealt with along the way. Do you understand? It's very easy to turn Narva into a military base when you have everything you need within 5 kilometers. You can have as much ammunition as you want. Everything that is available, everything you need will be delivered. Plus, there is aviation, helicopters, and so on and so forth. The military base will be set up by Russian soldiers. By the way, here's something amusing. I'll read it to you now. It's something that you just have to laugh about. Estonia plans to build a military base in Narva. But the construction is planned to be completed by the end of 2027. Well, there you go. So you basically understand, right, that if a group of armed people prepared with very good support, what do you want? With very good support, UAV support, the same Rubicon, the local self-defense, let's call it that. In fact, all the defense forces, police, border guards, intelligence services, even the TSW, there just won't be enough of them. Because trust me, the teams will be fully staffed and there will be optics everywhere. And everything will be fine. Plus, we must remember who will be there. Hostages, they will not be prisoners, they will be hostages. Those in uniform will be arrested. Some kind of basement will be organized where they'll all be deliberately placed. When the Russian armed forces group has already established itself, so to speak, across the state border, they use intelligence to control some part, the eastern part of the city, well, the eastern part. The following happens. Where does part of this group go? That's right, towards the Narva power plant, because hostages can be both people and objects. And with a minor assault, the power plant is taken along with all its employees, who also become hostages. We'll discuss later why this is necessary. Meanwhile, there are only 3 main entrances to Narva. A part of the group is also sent there, to the first checkpoint, the second checkpoint, the third checkpoint. Setting up checkpoints is actually not a problem. As we know, intelligence was there before. We'll talk about intelligence in black and white thought. And using those same vehicles, a pass regime can be easily organized. There will be shooting in the city, explosions, and a lot of people will be leaving. Traffic flow will likely be outward, but it will be insignificant. What happens next? We've discussed the power plant, the admin building, now let's move on. As you understand, the entire operation to capture Narva will be divided into several stages. One of the stages will include pushing forward, securing positions, creating chaos, seizing administrative buildings, taking over the power plant, and controlling major roads. This is actually the first stage. Meanwhile, we understand that the Estonian authorities will also try to do something. For example, they might try to roll in with heavy equipment. It's unclear why, but they'll try to do something anyway. For instance, to fight. In fact, all NATO exercises. The videos you need to watch are always conducted according to more or less a certain scenario. Yes, I understand they have a counter-terrorism plan. But with a 99% probability it will fail, because this plan always exists on paper and has never been executed in real time, on a large scale. So when the first wave of militants establishes itself, they will automatically fly in. Drone teams and FPV drone teams will immediately get to work. Drone teams will be able to set up a surveillance and reconnaissance zone over all of Narva and, most importantly, over the surrounding areas. That is, they will endlessly fly in circles and endlessly monitor all attempts to do anything. Then once something is detected, FPV drones fly out and dismantle it. Something was detected. FPV flew and dismantled it. No one will bomb the city. We understand that Estonia won't strike its own city because there are civilians there, meaning artillery. Special forces are deployed by helicopters. Well, I think 2 to 3 helicopters will be shot down, and that's the end of special forces. The vehicles that will be driving will simply be destroyed by FPV drones. The vehicles are still unarmored, and we remember the number of these vehicles. There are very few in Estonia. There's also not much airborne troops. A kill zone of 10 kilometers. On the approaches to Narva, they'll ensure the city is occupied, and that's a fact. I suggest you watch a video by Strelkov where he explains how this happened. I want to remind you that in 2014, Strelkov needed artillery systems, RPGs, mortars, and so on, to repel our attacks aimed at deoccupation. Back then, FPV drones weren't available, and all of this could be destroyed. He had problems with this, but he also had some luck. Therefore, things will develop differently now. Not a big video,
I just returned from the battlefield near Yantar. We have significant equipment losses, but not anymore. For one simple reason. Because once again, the enemy deployed over 100 armored vehicles against us, with strong artillery support, rocket artillery, and mortars. Our fighters repelled the first attack, knocked out one tank, but dealing with 15 to 20 tanks with just 2 recoilless guns is quite challenging. The battle is still ongoing. Our soldiers are holding out, but by evening, it's possible the enemy might break through. On the other hand, you hold the Yampol position. Retaking Seversk no longer makes sense. Our garrison is completely encircled operationally, and will fight just like the Brest Fortress garrison did, without any supplies.
This video was recorded 3 months after the occupation of Slavyansk began. So what's it about? About how they had to retreat because they were being killed. Killed by heavy equipment, mortars, artillery, etc. and so on. That's why they retreated, meaning Strelkov's gang. In 2026 there won't be such a problem. Why? Because a kill zone of 10 to 15 kilometers, even up to 20, and if there's Rubicon even more, will allow to take out all Estonian equipment, and if NATO runs, then NATO equipment too. We remember the failed exercises and remember that the NATO army asked not to fight using drones. Because what? Now there will be an insert of me back then saying, let's go. Czech paratroopers were supposed to storm Ukrainian military positions, with Mavics assisting the defenders. Well, like a classic situation, the paratroopers run to storm. After the first storming actions, Jakub came up to me and said, listen, can we remove the Mavics? They asked him, why, Jakub? You just spot us very quickly with your Mavics and we can't approach you. You detect us as we approach your position. Here's the Czech instructor speaking. To which our officer responded, Jakub, we are preparing for war. Если if Estonian forces, the army, NATO forces, want to kill separatists, they'll literally need to level blocks with artillery. Artillery is not precise, HIMARS won't be used on checkpoints, we understand that too. That's why the year 2026 is very different from 2014 in terms of technology. He finally calmed down, he was just getting on my nerves. Here's a little insert for you. Bad? Take a look. Dumb and dumber. Well, I'm dumb and he's even dumber. Or vice versa. Look, as we discussed in the last video that appeared here, the Estonian authorities can only dismantle their residential blocks. Why? Because they don't have tanks. They only have IFVs and infantry at their disposal. As far as I understand, they don't have any fighter jets either, or any real combat aviation for that matter. Equally, they might somehow use artillery. Modern warfare now occurs with the help of FPV. Support for assault operations is always with MFPV. As I said, our Ukrainian army is now fighting defensively. We have positions that the orcs endlessly attack. We send a lot towards the orcs from here. My program is working, I pay for information, and all of it gets destroyed. Everything that comes gets destroyed mostly. Columns don't move anymore, don't tell me about 425, I know about this movement. So UAV operators will be either in basements or attics or just apartments with balconies. They will be hard to detect, very hard to destroy. You might say, does Estonia have FPV too? No, there's no FPV there, and if there is, it's very few. Operators will find, smash, destroy. What will Russia do? You'll say they can't fight for that long. They can't. If I were Russia, I'd use my standard proven tactics. It's called humanitarian aid. What is it? We already went through all this back in 2014, when ammo was being transported in vehicles marked as humanitarian aid. Wherever the shells are heading, a gloomy character like Lavrov will show up and say there's a humanitarian catastrophe, people are asking for food and water, and so on. By the way, the electricity will be cut off. Just so you know, the power will only be on where it's needed. We'll talk more about that in my black and white thoughts. I'm making a note now. Dear people, quickly make sure to like and subscribe, because these are the longest thoughts of the Apostle on YouTube. And it's not over yet. Write in the comments, because this format an hour long is hard. I've been working on this for more than a day, as you can imagine. So why are we even talking about all this? Who is Putin's worst enemy? That's right, it's the hated NATO, the military alliance that's getting in his way. NATO is the biggest challenge for Putin, and he has no way to fight it. He needs to test the reaction. So, the special operation in Narva is a very cheap test of NATO's structure. When will all this take place? So at 5 in the morning it begins. By 11 or 12 the city is basically occupied. Refugees are heading one way, others are going to Vanko city. Ivangorod is there, Vanko city. Local outcasts, separatists, and the professional Russian army, special forces are setting up a command post. The city is without communication, without the internet, without any of that. I'll describe it in black and white terms. Reaction of NATO countries. In Article 5, they must gather and discuss. The leadership of Estonia in Tallinn will be holding some briefings. They think, they do something. Meanwhile, they try to storm, get a slap on the wrist. But NATO's reaction? It has two options, two possible reactions. First, they could say, well, this is your local conflict, the forces are unclear, it's basically fishermen and hunters. They learn to fly in simulators, you can build FPV drones at home, print parts on a 3D printer, and for explosives, they just bought some fertilizer and fake thermite, basically. There are videos on YouTube, I'm not promoting anything, but my program works. So the first option is that they'll say, this is Estonia's local conflict, handle it yourselves, these are local separatists, and this would be NATO's failure, essentially the collapse of NATO, because all the member countries will realize they are on their own. And the second option is that NATO has to get involved somehow, we'll talk about this, but Putin's goals, regardless of which option they choose, will already be achieved. For him, the ideal scenario is for NATO to collapse. For those who were attacked, it's not the best situation. The scenario where NATO takes a long time to decide. But firstly, it won't happen immediately. And now let's talk about what happens if NATO gets involved. A few days later, because if everything starts, say, on Friday, I'd start on Saturday. If it starts at 5 a.m. on Saturday, by Saturday afternoon it would already end as an occupation. NATO would gather, I think, maybe by Saturday evening. Then there will be long rounds of talks, discussions, consultations, and maybe by Monday something will happen. What is NATO now? It's a very powerful air force, we need to understand that, and very good intelligence, we need to understand that too. But this whole machine operates on a large scale. In a specific local city like Narva, no matter how many satellites you have flying, you'll see Narva basically like Google Maps. Because you won't see UAV setups from a satellite, you'll see antennas, you'll see emissions. But we're talking about a city where there's a lot of that. So let's take, for example, the situation in Iran. The US has been bombing Iran with its air force for 3 or 4 weeks. Yes, they've put a lot of equipment out of action, they've destroyed some strategic targets, they've done a lot, but they still haven't broken Iran. They haven't broken them, and that's a fact. Meanwhile, they're losing equipment, losing planes, losing their pilots. What does this tell us? It tells us that NATO is more about global war than an anti-terrorist operation in a settlement that a NATO plane would fly over in 4 or 5 seconds. You understand, right? A ground operation in Iran, as of right now, when this video is being recorded, there still hasn't been a ground operation. Why? Because everyone knows exactly what will happen. And when the coffins of Marines and paratroopers start heading to the US, Trump won't be happy. Because this Middle East story was concocted by him, and it was supposed to be a quick and victorious war. But when Americans start receiving coffins from a war they didn't want, they didn't order, they'll probably have some pretty big protests. The situation with Narva could be exactly the same. The likelihood of a Belgian soldier going to die in the assault on Narva is a similar story, wouldn't you agree? NATO's military doctrines are not designed for and do not account for modern drone warfare. A UAV crew ideally consists of 4 people. 2 pilots, a senior officer, and an engineer. The engineer is constantly carrying those drones back and forth. 1 pilot rests, 1 pilot flies. The senior officer handles reconnaissance, observes the targets, and gives instructions. If there's no officer, they have a stream, meaning reconnaissance is done at the control center. The operators just fly. Finding 20 such teams in a real city is just impossible. Finding 30 FPV crews who will endlessly launch FPV drones is just unrealistic. We must understand that the Estonian army, I don't want to insult them, Estonians are doing great, help us out, much respect to you. They haven't been under fire. We, Ukrainians, have all, roughly speaking, heard things flying and exploding near us. We've all been in cities, more or less, where the war basically never stops. Come here. Poor thing. NATO won't be able to help. They will be forced to level cities, but you don't believe that any NATO special contingent will land in the central square by helicopter. That will never happen because an FPV can easily shoot it down. An FPV costing $1,000 can take down a helicopter worth $15 million along with its crew. As I said, modern NATO is about big wars, not about fighting. A small city occupied by a small group of militants, terrorists. For such an operation, I think 1 brigade would be needed. If it flows into Narva. For example, 2,000 people. With full logistics, a full headquarters and so on, deoccupying it could take more than a month. Level it to the ground. The modern Russian army knows that wars must be fought from basements, they need to know how it works, so modern warfare is entirely different. If NATO deoccupies a small city over several months by completely wiping it out, this will say, what? That NATO is an ineffective story. It can't really put up a fight, it can't wage war. A small group of soldiers, a single brigade, easily seizes and occupies a city, and trying to dislodge that brigade is tough. Frontal assaults, we have a problem with FPVs. Airstrikes, well, again, nobody's cancelled the basements. And yes, Russia will use live people as cover. For them, it's not a problem at all. And besides, what's the guarantee that Russia won't attack and occupy even more, pushing the line further from its newly captured city? The LBS front line, closer there to Tallinn. A black and white thought, suddenly, just like that. Why? Because firstly the video dragged on, but this is quite a realistic scenario. Speed, lightning fast action, using undercover agents and other methods will help take Narva. What to do with this? Well, let's do it this way. Write in the comments, record so that I can do it. There's just also so that I can do it. It's a whole list that I need to think about for a whole day, and then another day to record, and then another day to edit it. If you want to hear my detailed thoughts on the topic, what I would do to prevent this, well, write in the comments and give a like. To put it in black and white thoughts, pulling off this move with Narva is not a problem. About 3 months for preparation. I would do the majority of the work using agents, whom I would use without them knowing. They wouldn't know what was really happening. We are dealing with a country, the unfinished Russian Federation, which has endless money. And buying someone in Estonia is not a problem. Especially if you offer them a position, restore their passport, or give them 10,000 euros. That's no problem at all. То есть, agents, as we know, can work for money, for an idea, or even better, for both money and an idea. And they will do all the work. The agents will not know what they need to do. Very easy. A basic task for the agency. I would, for example, rent 50 apartments in different places in Narva. It's not difficult. Not difficult. Why 50 apartments? I'd tell just one agent, rent an apartment here and here in these buildings. The expense, something like 1,000 euros for the first month, 1,000 euros for the second month. The agency would rent an apartment naturally, and I would know what I am going to do in that apartment. For example, in this apartment, I would set up a large EcoFlow or Bluetti and point the camera in the right direction. I would create a video wall of everything. One person rents the apartment, another person moves in, a third person delivers just the Bluetti to that address. The next delivers a camera, another delivers some kind of reb, or they install some other gadget and pass it on. Someone then comes to set it all up, meaning I would prepare the ground for such actions. I would take the city, divide it into sectors, visually control the cameras, and deliver generators to some places, as you remember. According to my plan, we need to break into the power plant and shut it down. Shut down the consumers. For what purpose? So that the local population who support Estonia would in no way be a source of simple intelligence. Because the locals might leak there. Well, here this one lies. Look, a tail. The locals might leak something. There are separatists walking around. There's a checkpoint. They have a stockpile of ammunition in the basement. I would cut off the city's power. The military doesn't need electricity. No water, no light. Everyone leaves. We understand that during war, no one thinks that you can just use the restroom in the central square. But it's true, you can do that and nothing will happen to you. The military will have generators because 300 of them will be purchased in advance. They will be in some old trucks, in some old pickups. Gasoline will be purchased. If now in the logistics of the Russian army this always needs to be pushed to the front, in the case of Narva, they will be able to do it very easily because there's no war there now. It's easy to buy a ton of diesel or a ton of gasoline. It's just 2,000 euros. And those 50 canisters can already be placed in these rented apartments. And the most important thing is that the people who will carry this out won't know that there might be 3 such apartments in this building. So what are we talking about now? Now someone over there will say, this is all unrealistic. We're talking about maybe $1 million, $3 million, and this can all be pulled off. 10 loyal agents, that's $100,000 a month. Buy 50 cars that will be used for logistics. Cars are cheap in Estonia. In Germany nearby, you can come, park the car, leave the keys, secure it, and it will stand there waiting until the bandit comes, opens it, gets in and drives off. And he'll know that there's an EcoFlow and a Starlink for communication in the trunk, because when they shut off mobile communication, they'll turn off everything they can. Russia will come with Starlinks. Yes, maybe Elon Musk will turn them off someday, but someone will need to write to SpaceX, discuss, detect the Starlinks, etc., and so on. But first, they'll turn off the lights and communication for everyone. Everyone will run away in panic. During this time, they will set up their control points. They command an observation points, setting up their crews. Everything will already be set up. The Starlinks will be repurposed. There will be a room where a full control unit will be organized, where some competent commander will come in and will watch the monitors and radios operated by the fighters. They will adjust and regulate everything. And most importantly, they will succeed. Not the best video, huh? Write in the comments. No, it's true. I theoretically have a scenario on how to deal with it. From a military logic standpoint, occupying Narva is no problem. There's no issue with it. And if you have $10 million, if you have 3 months for preparation, or if this preparation is already underway. Some guys are currently renting apartments, garages, and some local companies or individual entrepreneurs are buying Starlinks, generators, and canisters in bulk. Someone somewhere is buying medicine, and someone is already forming a warehouse with food and supplies. I don't know if you liked it or not. Folks, I picked you up, hugged you, flipped you over, and this one is just lying here on the keyboard, totally worn out. A complicated video, write 2 things in the comments. Long format, it's a mess. Should I record a counter strategy for Narva? How would I defend Narva? What would I do if I were a representative of the Estonian Defense Forces? Picked up, hugged, turned over. Thumbs up. Alright, let's go.